So we're going to spend a few minutes just going over what we did for the last couple of days about special right triangles. We used our squares in order to use the Pythagorean theorem to come up with a conjecture for a 45-45-90 right triangle. If I'd come up with the conjecture that we did in class, we can state that in a 45-45-90 triangle, if the leg is a number x, then the hypotenuse, using the Pythagorean theorem and everything that we've ever done, is x root 2. That is, if a leg is 9, then the hypotenuse is going to be 9 root 2. If a leg has has a length of 2.15, then the hypotenuse will be 2.15 root 2. And if I wanted to get that as a complete decimal, I could, or I could just leave it like this. Now, what happens if we know the hypotenuse? Well, again, we came up with that conjecture. If the hypotenuse is y, then we came up with the fact that the legs were going to be 1/2 of that y times root 2. So, if the hypotenuse was 8, the leg would be 4 root 2. If the hypotenuse was 10, the leg would be 5 root 2. If the hypotenuse was 150, the leg would be 75 root 2, half of the hypotenuse, root 2. And then I'm going to throw in something a little bit trickier, an odd number. What if the hypotenuse is 13? Well, half of 13 is 6.5, root 2. So this conjecture will work for every 45-45-90 right triangle. And we figured that out because we took a square, we know that the sides are the same. If we do the Pythagorean theorem, we know that x squared plus x squared equals question mark squared. If I put numbers in here, we'll find out that it's always going to be x root 2 or 1/2 y root 2. So there's our 45-45-90. Today in class, we did this investigation. We took a simple equilateral triangle. We marked it up. I just gave you that 8. So we marked it up. We got 8, 8, 8. If I take this perpendicular line and drop it from the top vertex, what happens is I cut this guy in half. So since it's an equilateral triangle, all of these are 60 degrees. So what we do is we get to create a new triangle from this. We get to create a right triangle, which is half of the equilateral triangle. And since it's half of the equilateral triangle, this side is going to be 4. This angle, because it's half, is going to be 30. Nothing happened to this angle here. That's going to be 60. So now this is a new special right triangle. This is called a 30-60-90. And we came up with some conjectures that the hypotenuse is going to be twice the leg across from 30, or the small leg. And if we do the Pythagorean theorem, 4 squared plus x squared equals 8 squared. If we do the Pythagorean theorem, we're going to get subtract 16 on both sides, so x squared equals 48, and x equals root 48. And remember, when all is said and done, when I simplify this guy, I get root 3 times root 16. So my final simplified answer is 4 root 3. So we came up with this conjecture. Now remember, we did this a bunch of times. We did this with the equilateral triangle that was 10. We did it with an equilateral triangle that was 18. This is what I gave you in class. And so now we're trying to come up with that conjecture. So, in the conjecture that we just figured out, by doing all of those examples, but again, I'll bring up this one, okay? I'll try to move this over here so you can see. Can we see all that in one thing? Let me make this a little bit. Let me zoom out. Bear with me. I'm going to zoom out there. Okay. Okay. So if we look at that triangle right here, the black triangle here, okay, if I look at that triangle, I know that if I know the short leg, it's X. I'm going to bring that to purple so you can see a different color. If I know the short leg is X, what's the hypotenuse going to be? I'm skipping, that's okay. The hypotenuse is going to be twice that. And what's the long leg going to be? The long leg is going to be the short leg times root 3, X root 3. Now, what if we know the hypotenuse? What if the hypotenuse is X? Well, we won't call it X, my mistake. What if the hypotenuse is another whole number, Y? If the hypotenuse is Y, what is the short leg? Well, the short leg is going to be 1/2 of that. And if I know the short leg, I know the long leg, right? The short leg is X, the long leg is X root 3. So if the short leg is 1/2 Y, the long leg is 1/2 Y root 3. Then, what happens if I know the long leg? Now that's the tricky part. If the long leg is Z, the short leg, how do I get from the long leg to the short leg? I have to divide it by root 3. So that means I have to take Z and divide it by root 3. Remember, when I divide by root 3, I have to rationalize the denominator, so I get Z root 3 over 3. Another way I can write that is 1/3 of Z root 3. I'm allowed to do that. So I can do that. That's the math on that. And now, as long as we know the short leg, we know the hypotenuse. We can go back up here. So the hypotenuse is twice the short leg. So the short leg is going to be 2 times 1/3 Z root 3. And what is 2 times 1/3 Z root 3? It's 2/3 Z root 3. So this is the toughest one, when the long leg is given to you as a whole number. And clearly, if it's not giving it to you as a number that's divisible by 3, it's going to be a little tricky. Okay? But this is what happens when you have any 30, 60, 90 right triangle. These are the conjectures. Try practicing this with the worksheet. The answers are also on the website. Good luck.